Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am the City Witch, and today we're going to be doing a book review for The Temple of Hekate, exploring the goddess Hekate through ritual, meditation and divination, written by Tara Sanchez. So before I dive into the book review, let me just walk through how I like to conduct my book reviews first. So it's very simple. I have read the book from cover to cover. I have tried and tested many of the techniques contained within, and I've made notes on all the positives and negatives of this book. And then right at the end, I will score the book from 1 to 10 to let you know what I personally thought. And I will also let you know if it made it onto my magical bookshelf, because if it's not good, it doesn't make it to my shelf, and that is my rule. So, The Temple of Hekate. Now, this book has been out for quite a long time, and it's not something I'd read before now. I kind of read this book late last year, and I think I had it in my book collection from about April. So my apologies for being slow to get around to read this. But I do have a large collection of books, guys, and many of them have been bought by yourselves in support of my business, and I like to do them all in order if I can. So this one came to me around April, and I started reading it around October, and I actually flew through this book. And as you can see, I have a lot of sticky notes in it, which means there's a lot of useful information in it and things that I definitely enjoyed and I want to refer to time and time again. So it kind of tells you already that I'm probably going to score this book pretty high and that I did enjoy this book. So let's dive into the book and show you the contents first of all. So this book was published in 2011, because so like I said, it has been on the market for some time. You get some information about the author, and then you get a acknowledgements, and there is also a foreword in the book as well. So in the table of contents, we can skip over the acknowledgements and foreword because I've already mentioned them. So you then get a brief introduction. So the introduction is basically just some background information on Hekate, talking to you about her from the Greek perspective. And that's very important, guys. This book is written for somebody that wants to work with her from the Greek pantheon, and it very much focuses a lot on Greek practices, Greek offerings, and it references the Greek magical papyri quite a lot. So you do get some background on her. Now, bear in mind this book was written in 2011, so there is some outdated information in the book now, and we do know some extra new information that came to light about Hekate, and we know she's as old as Mesopotamia, and there's new information that suggests she could be even older than that. So we know that she predates Greek mythology, and with the Greeks and Romans, they like to spread around a lot, and when they did that, they often incorporated other deities from other religions and spiritualities into the fold, bringing them in and sort of adopting them. And that's what happened with Hekate. So this is kind of written from the perspective of Hekate already being adopted into Greek mythology. She's part of their pantheon. They've given her, you know, a mum and dad. They've given her stories. She's in their mythologies. And then they built temples to her and started worshipping her. So it's all about that, and you get all of that in the introduction. Then there's a little bit about the practice and worship of Hekate, which was very interesting. And then we get into general magical practice. So we've got keeping a magical journal. I don't think you need me to go into too much detail about that, do you guys? We all keep magical journals or notebooks, so we know what that's about. And then we've got the altar, and again, that's not specific to Hekate, it's just generally keeping an altar. However, there's some lovely suggestions for making it more specific for your Hecatean practice. Then there's the statuary. So this is all about like statues, figurals, images, and things you can use to represent her. Then we have purification, because that's an important subject. Your space needs to be pure, clean and cleansed and prepared for magical work. And then there was a section I didn't expect, which is magical robe making. So making a robe. Now, I haven't seen that since reading Wiccan books when I was 12. So that kind of comes from wanting to be a bit more religious with your practice. And it does have Christian or Catholic influences, or at least I felt that way when I read it. Now, those things are not mentioned, but the use of wearing robes and everything, that kind of helps you get into the mindset. It helps you put aside your daily activities and kind of put on your magical robes, which puts you in a magical mindset and helps you focus on what you're going to be doing. So it can be handy and useful, but these days, most of us don't bother. Most of us don't wear robes or magical stuff like that. A lot of us wear magical jewelry, crystals, things of that like, but we don't tend to wear magical robes, or at least I don't know any witches that do anymore. But there is, again, some lovely suggestions there for making it very special and sacred to Hekate and for your Hecatean practice. So if that's something you're into, you absolutely can make some robes. And there is a full-on like print of the measurements and everything. And so if you really want to go out and buy fabric and make it yourself, you can absolutely do that based on the instructions in this book, which was quite nice. Ritual gestures. So this was moving your body, using hands and using your kind of entire being in your magical practice. And again, that's not something you see very often, because most people, when they're casting spells, they're either sat down at a table or stood over a table, but they forget to use gesture, hand movements, their voice, their breath, you know, their vocal cords. They usually just use their mind and direct energy. Sometimes they'll use breath work, but they, you know, take away dance and song and things like that, which actually were very common in older magical practices. So this talks about that here, using those things. And then we go from using your body and your hands to using your voice. So we have sacred vowels. So this is pronunciation, emphasis on certain words, using your vocal cords and putting power and energy into your words and voice when you are chanting, when you are singing, when you are saying your spells. And that was a really fascinating chapter and really enjoyable. Then we have incense. So this actually provides a lot of magical incenses that you might enjoy making. So if you're crafty like me, you're definitely going to like that section because it has recipes and things in it. Then we have banishing rituals, which again is really important. You need to know how to cleanse effectively and prepare a space and bless it. You also need to know how to banish and clear it. And you need to know how to make sure you can remove anything that has come into your space that should not be there. So that covers all of the basics. Then we go into creating sacred space. So dedicating it, blessing it, anointing it, and making it sacred. Then we had some knot magic, which was quite unexpected, but also very enjoyable. And there's definitely things there that I have done. I'm quite creative, so I definitely like things like knot magic, making things, crafting herbal blends, making candles from scratch, and making oils and incenses. So a lot of this appeals to me. Then we had the magic wand. So this talks about the magic wand in general and how it's useful in witchcraft for directing energy, especially for a beginner. But it also talks to you about sacred woods that the Greeks used, but in particular wood that was sacred to Hekate. Psychic development, so developing your psychic skills and learning to communicate with Hekate. Then it goes into the elements, oracles and divinations, and again, a lot of this is working with these tools with Hekate. So there's definitely a lot of ideas for making your practice more sacred to her and devoting yourself to her and becoming a Hecatean devotee. Then we have divination with tarot cards, divination with dice, dream incubation. That was completely unexpected, but very, very fascinating. Now, sometimes in older books, you will find talk of lucid dreaming, dream walking, which is actually a very hard, rare skill. And a lot of younger or more modern practitioners don't bother learning those old techniques anymore. I mean, I myself know how to do these things, and especially astral projection. And again, you don't hear people talk about astral projection anymore as if it's outdated and useless, but it's not. It's really valuable and in certain aspects, very necessary. So dream incubation is using your dreams to incubate and kind of plant seeds for manifestations and using your mind when you're asleep. Absolutely fascinating, a really good subject. So definitely something I think more advanced practitioners will like. As a beginner, you might struggle with that a little bit if you're still learning your psychic skills, learning how to control your energy and tap into your personal power. So that might be a little bit of an intermediate to advanced practice. However, it's in the book should you want it at a later date. The Temple of Hekate. There are a lot of references there to actual temples around the world that you can visit that are still there today, which was great. And it talks about building your personal temple and practice with her. Hymns, mantras, evocations and invocations. So actually evoking her and invoking her. That, again, brilliant. There was loads of really interesting stuff there. The mantras and the hymns were lovely. So you're definitely going to enjoy that if you like to recite things to her, sing to her. If you like to say your spells out loud, that is definitely a chapter you will enjoy. Ritual planning and performance. So it's teaching you how to lay out your spells and rituals, how to plan in advance and adapt your practice as needed. And the night battle ritual, which is a really big ritual you can do with Hekate. And then we have a few lists at the back of the book. So I will kind of go through the book a little bit just to point out some of the stuff that I have marked in the book. So consecration of Hekate with Helios. So we do work with some other deities. So this is a sanctuary exercise to make your space sacred to her and bless your altar. Here we have hand gestures, movements, certain positions that you can do with her. Let me put that more in the middle. So there you can see it's showing you how to do it. It's showing you the gestures, and it walks you through before this why you're doing these things and why they're important. Here I said about making the robes and showing you how to do it. So ritual gestures. Now this section like I said, I really enjoyed. So here we talk about the movements, using the body and incorporating your body more into practice, and it shows you some of the ways to do that. Then we have vowels. Also, this covers pronunciation on Greek vowels as well, and pronouncing her name correctly. So obviously, when you look at Greece and their alphabet, they didn't have a H. So many people say Hekate and emphasize the H, but actually it would have been Ekate or Hekate. So it's kind of, you need to dull down the H and focus more on the E when you're pronouncing her name. And it kind of covers that in this as well. So here we have the incense, so the different blends that you can make, ritually banishing sacred space, you know, and all of these sections are quite short, but simple and easy to understand. So they're not overly complicated, excellent for a beginner. Now this was one of my favorites, and this is something I've referred to quite a bit. So here it teaches you how to connect with Hekate and work with her with the winds. And there's a full-on ritual to summon the 4 winds using the Greek names, which was fantastic. And then again, casting a circle, but calling on the winds to do that. And then it incorporates the gestures you've learned earlier in the book. Here we have some knot magic going on. And there's like pictures throughout the book as well to help you understand what you should be doing, where you should be stood, you know, what it should look like. So this is a meditation that I quite enjoyed, Hekate of the Earth, and this runs you through all of the elements. So if you want to connect to her through the elements, there's a meditation for every single one. And I enjoyed these so much that I'm doing them once a month. So a couple more practical exercises. So interacting with Hekate, petitioning Hekate. And then the last thing I'm going to show you that I outlined was the ritual opening. So this was suggestions on how to ritually adapt your practice and open circles with Hekate. So mine, which I've, had and created for a long, long time, goes as follows. Hekate, I call upon you, guardian of the crossroads, keeper of the keys, walker between realms, guide, guardian, gatekeeper, triple moon goddess, titaness and queen of the witches. I summon you to this space. I invoke thee and call you forth. Come forth, come forth, come forth. Come forth, come forth, come forth. Come forth, come forth, come forth. Hail and welcome. I can literally feel her as I'm saying that. that is my invocation of her, summoning her to me and asking her to be present in my practice. That has always been my particular ritual welcome to her. But design your own, guys. Feel free to use that if you want to. I don't mind people using that if they want to. But this actually helps you outline on how to do that yourself, different things you can say, different epithets you can call upon. So let's talk about the positives of the book. So, excellent book for beginners, extremely beginner friendly, fantastic introduction and history and background of Hekate. This book approaches her from the Greek perspective, like I said, a lot of references to the Greek magical papyri. The book teaches the basics of witchcraft, so if you are also new to witchcraft or at the beginning of your journey, this is a great addition for that reason. The book is simple, it's not overly complicated, and it doesn't make it difficult to understand how to practice and work with Hekate and build your devotion to her and become, if you wish, a Hecatean devotee. So this is a great starting point for all of that and for a beginner walking the path of witchcraft for the first time. As I've said, the book is simple and easy to understand. It's laid out beautifully and the chapters flow from one to the other in a really nice way. A lot of the techniques are very interesting. It's packed full of ideas, exercises, meditations, and creative things that you can do, as I've shown as we went through the book. And I would say my favourite section of the book, without a doubt, was working with the winds, the elements, and incorporating other Greek deities into my practice with Hekate, which is something I'd never done before reading this book. I always just worked with her and a couple of my personal spirits that I built a relationship with, that Hekate is comfortable with me working with alongside her. But I never thought to work with some of the other Greek deities, so that was quite unique, and the introductions on how to do that was provided in this book. So all of that was fantastic and just wonderful to have. Now for the negatives. While it does include correspondences at the back of the book, this book did not include a list of offerings or any special dates associated with Hekate, such as Deipnon. Now, Deipnon is mentioned briefly as a reference from the magical papyri. However, it doesn't give any lists or recommendations and instructions for how to celebrate Deipnon and how to incorporate that in your practice. Now, Deipnon is always celebrated on the dark moon. I know a lot of people are calling it the new moon these days, but it's technically, if it's invisible and you cannot see it, it is the dark moon, okay? It doesn't become the new moon until it starts to show. Then it's the new moon. So dark moon would be typically when you celebrate Deipnon. And this book just didn't give enough information on that for my liking and tastes. And considering the Greek magical papyri is mentioned a lot in this book, that information was readily available and was there in the Greek magical papyri. So why was it not included in this? So I found that a little bit odd, and it did knock it down a little bit in my expectations. At the back of the book, as I said, there are lists of associated deities and spirits and all sorts of different correspondences. And there's not as many as I would have liked, but they do exist. Now, one of those lists talks about deities and spirits. However, some of the deities and spirits on that list, it's a bit of a stretch to connect them to Hekate. And for me, the connection was thin at best. There were some on there that were excellent, and you could totally understand why they were on there, but there was also some that I was like, really? And the author had given information for that, but it was just so thin that I was like, I feel like you're stretching it a bit to make that a connection. So for me, some of them on that list were not acceptable. The book doesn't have much for an advanced practitioner, and the meditations, exercises and rituals are a little bit on the basic side. So if you are quite advanced, you might not find the book boring, but find it a little bit like it's repeated because you found that information elsewhere. So the stuff about, building an altar, banishing, cleansing, all of those things tend to be in hundreds of books out there. So that might come across as a little bit boring. Or useless, or things you skip over. But the stuff about Hekate herself, connecting with the winds, and some of the more interesting things like the dream incubation is absolutely worth it in this book. So for an advanced practitioner, not so good, but for a beginner going into intermediate or someone that wants to dedicate themselves more to Hekate, learn about her, connect with her, this is an absolutely fantastic book. For that reason, I would easily score this book a good solid 8 out of 10. It is definitely a book I'm keeping in my collection, so it has made it to my magical library. And as you can see, there are things in this book that I am going to continue to work with and build into my practice. So that concludes my book review. I do hope you all enjoyed it, guys. If you did, give me that thumbs up, click the bell, and YouTube will tell you when my next video comes out. If you'd like to offer like, love and support to my channel, or purchase a book like this in support of my business that you'd like me to review, I have provided my Amazon wishlist and my PayPal link. If you'd like to book any of my magical services or have a private discussion with me about Hekate, you can contact me via the links provided on Facebook, Instagram, X, and via email. Thank you so much for watching till the end and supporting me, guys, and I will see you all very soon. Take care of yourselves. Blessed be.